More on the economic implications of the crisis in Greece. We are joined by Constance Hunter. She is chief economist at Galtair International, an investment advisory and management firm with $1.2 billion total assets under management. Constance, thanks so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank you. There is, in our story on the Bloomberg terminal, we note that the European leaders say that they want Greece to get its budget deficit under control. They said they were prepared to take what they called determined action.
But no detail.
Yeah, but no details, exactly.
Well, let's step back and look at what's happening to Greece. And it's really quite simple. It is as if you bought a house on an ARM mortgage and you had a good job at the time you did it, and all of a sudden mortgage rates reset. Well, it's a problem. You have to tighten your budget. Then fast forward a little bit and you lose your job. Now you have big decisions to make. Maybe you say, we'll cut the country club, we'll keep the kids in college. But you have a problem. And if you start to have your interest rates go up more, you have even more of a problem.
But might I ask, whose fault is that? Because if you get an ARM mortgage, there's a possibility the rates are going to reset. If you get a fixed mortgage, you don't have a problem.
Well, and in the case of Greece, I think this is where we have an interesting situation. Obviously, the powers that be in Europe realize they can't just leave Greece hanging out there. They're going to have to do something, but Greece has a problem unless they get their job back. So unless they get growth back to the average of 7.1% from 04 to 07, they're not going to be able to grow their way out of their deficit problem.
Is there any way to increase that economic growth for Greece? We know Greece is intent on tightening its budget deficit, but really, I mean, is there anything to maybe draw tourism? You know, this is the problem, slow-growing so-called pig nations. I mean, how do you spark that growth in that region?
Yeah, and well, formerly fast-growing is really the issue, right? They had fast growth, now they no longer have fast growth, and they were levered based on the fast growth and assuming that fast growth would continue. So for Greece, they're really, I think the main thing they're going to have to do is think of ways to restructure their debt. Now, they have some time. They don't have any debt rolling over until April, and Europe has some time to pull together how they're going to handle this. But Greece's 60% of their exports go to the rest of Europe.
Right.
So there's no way for them to increase competitiveness with Europe unless they start to have deflation and wages falling in their country. And you saw from the union protests earlier this week that that's not something the Greek people want. So there's going to be political back and forth while this happens.
Mentioning political back and forth, what's behind this move to announce an accord today, again with little detail on how they're going to go about handling Greece and possible contagion?
Well, you can see that the financial markets are affected by this, right? We had a big fall in equities, and it's moved not just from Europe but into the U.S. and around the world.
And can you? I hate to interrupt you, but can you tell people why there's a ripple effect? Why does that affect things here?
Well, we're not immune either here in the United States. So one thing that people may have been reading about in the press is, well, California could default or Michigan could default.
So what's the difference? I'm interrupting you now. I apologize.
It's okay.
And you use the example, too, of the homeowner in describing the Greek situation. But there's got to be a fundamental difference. We were talking about this yesterday with Tom Keene, and he was teasing me, Lori, just go shopping. California will be fine because we have cash flow here in the United States coming. There's still demand for our Treasury auctions. As one example.
So far.
That was a question I challenged Tom on that, and he kind of brushed me off and said it's not a problem, and I guess that's obviously up for considerable debate right now. But it's a different circumstance, or at least the Greek situation and the pig situation is viewed differently than our own debt situation
is right now. The reason it's viewed differently is a legal situation. There's the Lisbon Treaty, and there's Articles 122 and 123, which basically preclude the European Union from stepping in and helping out countries that get into this problem because they didn't want the moral hazard issue. But once you're faced and your back is up against the moral hazard issue, you usually cave, right? And so, there's a lot of room for nervousness, I think. Also, the euro and the dollar are linked. There's a high correlation between the S&P. There's a high correlation to commodity prices, right? All commodities are priced in dollars. The euro gets weaker. They might not be able to afford as many commodities. Commodity prices start to fall. Commodities are linked to the S&P. There's a lot of, natural resources companies in the S&P. So it's everything in the globe is interlinked.
Might I ask, why did Germany step up and take a lead role in this? As the largest economy in the 27-nation bloc, is it because that they had the fiscal muscle to do this? They're taking on a great deal of risk, both politically and perhaps financially, by saying we're going to step in and we're going to help Greece because we don't want a ripple effect through the rest of the bloc.
I think what they're really doing is taking a leadership position. I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be Greece's taxpayer that foots the bill for this. That's not going to be politically tenable. Angela Merkel cannot live with that, and she's not going to be able to keep power if that's what she proposes. It's more Germany saying we're going to take a leadership role. We're not going to let Greece spiral into crisis. We're going to address this, and we're going to make sure that that we find some solutions. The issue is that the solutions are hard. Like I said, they're going to have to grow their way out of this, or they're going to face continued problems, and that's a big challenge.
Can you explain in the most simplest terms how Greece will go about, I think you brought a debt schedule, debt payment schedule along with you, the best way to navigate out of this with the EU support?
Well, this is the interesting thing, and the market doesn't know exactly how it's going to play out because, like I said, there's different legal ramifications that Europe has to get around. But essentially,
I'm asking you to guesstimate, speculate for
yeah. So there's a potential that the European Central Bank could come in and support a Greek debt auction. So the Greeks have auctions. They don't do it like we do. They do a syndication. So they could come in and give a loan to a bank. The bank then buys the Greek debt. The Greek debt auction doesn't fail, and what happens is they get to have a more reasonable interest rate. Another thing that people have been talking about is a potential IMF rescue package. Now, we know two examples in Europe are Sweden and Finland. When they had debt issues, the IMF came in and helped restructure their debt. But along with that comes fiscal austerity, and then with any European solution, there's going to be fiscal austerity.
Okay. Constance Hunter, the economist with Galtair International, thank you so much.
You're
A
so
real
welcome.
interesting topic, developing story. Appreciate your insights on it today.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling.